for racial war. Who will benefit? Will I as a black person benefit? Will our poor suffering people benefit? Will white people benefit? No. It is good that somebody sounds the alarm, not because they see smoke, but they see fire, so that those who recognize can call the fire department to put the fire out. The alarm is being sounded.
Welcome to a special edition of Black Horizons. Today we bring you an exclusive interview with the controversial and outspoken Minister Louis Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam. This is the first of an ongoing series from our recent trip to Chicago, where we had an opportunity to talk with several influential leaders of national prominence. We launch our series with a profile of the dynamic Muslim minister, Louis Farrakhan. By now, the name Louis Farrakhan has become a familiar headline. However, the sensationalism of the headlines, the power of his presence, and the controversy surrounding his threatening rhetoric have all combined to ignite acute reactions. Who is Louis Farrakhan? Is his message divisive and destructive? Have his threatening remarks been distorted and confused? You decide, as we now present our candid and revealing interview with Minister Louis Farrakhan, the man behind the message.
I say to the Jewish people, who may not like our brother, it is not Jesse Jackson that you're attacking. When you attack him, you attack the millions that are lining up with him. You're attacking all of us. But if you harm this brother, I warn you in the name of Allah, this will be the last one you harm.
Minister Louis Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam. His fiery words and negative criticisms of the Jewish community have created controversy, confusion, and constant criticism of the black Muslim leader. Not since the days of the Nation of Islam's Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X has a black Islamic leader commanded such attention. When he broke with the nation's policy of abstention from politics by actively supporting his longtime friend, Reverend Jesse Jackson, in his presidential bid, he was received as a vital link toward building the broad-based Rainbow Coalition and was soon thrust into the political spotlight. In the beginning, it seemed that the black community and many Jackson advocates welcomed Minister Farrakhan's support. It was not until Jackson, Farrakhan, and others returned from their triumphant mission to Syria, obtaining the release of hostage Lieutenant Robert Goodman, that this evolving Rainbow Coalition became clouded with controversy. When it was disclosed by Washington Post reporter Milton Coleman that Jackson as Jaime's and to New York City as Jaimetown, there was an outcry of protest from the Jewish community. An eventual apology was made by Jackson. However, Farrakhan expressed a stronger reaction. The media called it a threat on Coleman's life.
Don't tell me nothing about you a reporter. You a nigger in the eyes of white people. Do you understand what I'm saying? I said, but we're going to make an example of Milton Coleman. One day soon, we will punish you with death. We're going to punish the traitor and make the traitor beg for forgiveness.
Farrakhan's efforts to defend Jackson continued to cause friction within the Rainbow. Recurring anti-Semitic remarks from the Muslim leader culminated with his reported reference to Judaism as a gutter religion.
Because there can be no peace structured on injustice, thievery, lying, and deceit, and using the name of God to shield your dirty religion under his holy and righteous name.
The use of the word gutter was vehemently denied by Farrakhan.
Never in my talk used the word Judaism, nor did I use the word gutter.
But in spite of all his explanations, Farrakhan's remarks have apparently further polarized relations between blacks and Jews.
And the right thing is to say to Mr. Jackson that there is no unity with a man who keeps close to him a bigot of the stripe of Louis Farrakhan.
This pressure for Jackson to break the association with Farrakhan included threats from party members to ban Jackson from the Democratic National Convention unless he does so. Jackson separated himself from the divisive message, but he resisted breaking ties with the man behind the message. During my recent interview at his Chicago headquarters, Minister Louis Farrakhan discussed the growing tension between blacks and Jews.
The Jewish persons in positions of authority have always been able to get black surrogates to condemn another black leader on their behalf. And now Jewish leaders find it difficult to find black leaders who are willing to trot out there and condemn Louis Farrakhan. So they have to come out and condemn me themselves. And so it puts Koch and Perlmutter and others out on Front Street. And of course, Mr. Koch and others are very hysterical. And to us, I mean, if it weren't so serious, it's laughable that now Louis Farrakhan has become the litmus test of any black person that wants Jewish support. You have to condemn Farrakhan.
Many people have reacted negatively to your comments stemming from the Jaime controversy, your remarks that Hitler was a wickedly great man. You've been accused of polarizing blacks and Jews. Why have your comments drawn such alarming reactions from the media, and what impact has this had on the Jackson campaign?
In my judgment, there were no statements that I made as a speaker for Reverend Jackson or on his behalf that were racially polarizing or racially inflammatory. The thing that was seized upon was my rebuke of Milton Coleman, and my words, of course, were taken out of context. And the next thing that was seized was the fact that in my introduction of Reverend Jackson at our Savior's Day convention, I was appealing to blacks and Jews to sit and talk with each other because, in my judgment, Jewish power, which is reflected in the media, was being used or misused. I felt that the Jaime remark did not deserve the kind of attention that it received. And I felt that this awesome misuse of power was creating an atmosphere that could have gotten Reverend Jackson assassinated. And in my fervor to see Reverend Jackson live through this, I made the statement that if Reverend Jackson is harmed, he will be the last one that you harm. Now, why did I say that? What did I mean? I meant that blacks as a people are tired of feeding our great leaders to the American disposition of racism as feeding wild meat or raw meat to a wild beast. We've lost every strong black leader that we've had. Instead of their asking me what I meant, the next day I was being called a new Hitler. And so I responded to that, and of course my response to that has been headline news, but it allowed the press to misuse my words to create more of an atmosphere to try and embarrass Reverend Jackson.
Your words are a strength that you have, and yet the symbolism is very difficult for white leaders to comprehend. Senator Ed Kennedy has said that we need to beware of a leader such as yourself. Someone who shakes the hand of Gaddafi is certainly someone that we need to have our eyes on. What is the relationship between you and Gaddafi?
Well, let's back up a minute. You know, Mr. Kennedy is a very respected leader among our people, and I'm sure that Mr. Kennedy is not president today because some people felt that we need to be aware of certain character flaws within him. I shook Mr. Reagan's hand, and I shook Mr. Bush's hand on my return from Syria with Reverend Jackson. Now, certainly, if I can shake Mr. Reagan's hand, the same hand that cut back lunch programs and food stamps, and the same hand that gave the CIA the go-ahead to mine the harbors of Nicaragua, and the same hand that gave the go-ahead to invade Grenada, certainly, if I can shake his hand and shake Bush's hand, who was head of the CIA, and the CIA is a notorious, murderous organization, why, there are no hands on earth that are too unclean for Louis Farrakhan to shake.
What is the relationship? You recently took a trip to Libya. Of course, the press is concerned. What happened? What did you do? What did happen there?
Well, I would respectfully say to the press, it's none of their business. You know, white folks take journeys every day. You don't go and ask them, what did you talk about? You don't have the nerve to ask the president when he comes out of a meeting, and what did you discuss? And if he says, well, we had a very constructive meeting, that's to tell you I'm not going to tell you what went on. But in light of the fact that you asked the question, I went to Libya on the invitation of the Libyan people, the Islamic Call Society, and Colonel Gaddafi. I went purposely to build bridges of friendship and understanding between the nation of Islam in the West and Islamic countries, of which Libya is just one, in Africa and the Middle East. I feel that there is great misunderstanding of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I wanted to go and answer those questions among the Islamic scholars and see if we couldn't build bridges of friendship. When I got there, I found that the bridges had already been built. They already know our philosophy, understand it, even though they don't totally agree with it. They feel that we are a strong Muslim group, and they would like to help us in our effort to lift our people up.
When we return, I'll continue my discussion with Minister Louis Farrakhan. We'll discuss the Nation of Islam, the assassination of Malcolm X, and more. So don't go away. But people who followed you know that you've been a minister and leader in the Nation of Islam for some time. How did an Episcopalian from Boston become a member of the Nation of Islam? How did that happen for you?
As a young boy, I've always been passionately concerned for the liberation of our people. I grew up in the church, as you know, but I wanted to go south to get closer to the struggles of our people. So when I finished high school and prep school, I got a track scholarship to Winston-Salem Teachers College. And on my way south, I had a layover in Washington, D.C., and I decided to attend a movie. And when I went to put my few dollars up at the movie, a gentleman came out and told me that they didn't sell tickets to niggers. And I can recall my walking down the street in a daze because a friend of mine had just gotten killed in Korea. And I wondered to myself, what have we been fighting for? And so seeing the hypocrisy in Christian practice and the variance between Christian belief, I at that time couldn't harmonize and say, well, there are some people who profess Christianity but are not living it. I started looking for another way to express my belief in God. Then my search led me to Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, which was in essence a protest against all forms of racism and hypocrisy in the United States. Of course, now that I have matured in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I do not like to see the differences and the divisions between Muslims and Christians. People that believe in God, since we all believe that there is but one God, and He is the sender of prophets and the revealer of all scriptures and is the source of all truth, then there must be this common denominator that will bring all people who believe in God into one family.
I've heard you say that you are a Christian, you are a Baptist. What do you mean when you say that?
I mean that as a Muslim, a person that is a Muslim believes in one God and believes in submitting his will to do the will of God. And all Muslims follow the example of Muhammad of Arabia, Prophet Muhammad. We in America see that example in the person of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. To be a Christian means to be crystallized into oneness with God through the example of Jesus Christ. So if being a Muslim means to obey God, submit to the will of God, following the example of Prophet Muhammad, and being a Christian means to be crystallized into oneness with God, following the example of Jesus Christ, we're actually saying the same thing, only to say Muslim, you're using an Arabic word. To say Christian or Christ, you're using a Greek word.
You're a member of the Nation of Islam. You were a leader during a very golden period under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You were a leader. Malcolm X was a leader. Wallace, his son, who's now Warthdeen Muhammad, was a leader. What was it like during that period?
We were very, very close. And Malcolm, as the premier spokesperson for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was a man that I truly loved and admired, because to me he was the greatest helper of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And of course it saddened me much that in 1964 Imam Warthdeen Muhammad defected from the nation along with Malcolm X. And of course we rejoiced when Wallace came back, and many of us were very, very saddened by Malcolm's leaving the nation, and which led, of course, to his untimely death. I think that Malcolm recognized the correctness of Elijah Muhammad's teaching and view. Even though he went toward Orthodox Islam, time is proving Elijah Muhammad correct, and I believe that if Malcolm were alive today, Malcolm would probably be with his teacher again.
Who killed Malcolm X?
I don't actually know who killed him, but I know this, that 2 men are in prison today who are innocent of Malcolm's murder. The one person that was found at the scene of the crime, who confessed his part in that assassination of Malcolm, exonerated the other 2 in the trial and said that these 2 had nothing to do with Malcolm's assassination. These 2 that were tried along with the person who was found at the scene were actual members in good standing with the nation. And they were the link that gave the state authorities or the government the case to link the Nation of Islam with the assassination of Malcolm. And since it was the counterintelligence program of the United States government under J. Edgar Hoover to split Malcolm from his teacher, then put one group against the other, thereby killing 2 birds with 1 stone, it had to stick that these 2 innocent men who were lieutenants in the nation were a part of that crime. And now, some years later, the gentleman or the brother that was at the scene has now named all of the persons that were involved with him in the assassination of Malcolm, and the government will not reopen the case to give these 2 innocent men justice.
More people have become aware of the Nation of Islam since your association with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Historically, the followers of Elijah Muhammad have not been active in the political system. There seem to be some changes since the days of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
First, I want to say that it's not that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad didn't believe in being a part of the system. We are in America. We live in America. We deal with this system on a daily basis. Mr. Muhammad was very much a part of things economically, though he wanted us to have separate schools. And we did have separate schools and separate places of amusement, and he did not want us to take part in the politics of America because he felt, and rightly so, that the politics of this country is corrupt and that this is the white man's game of civilization that he plays, and whenever a black man learns to master the rules, he changes the rules. We understand that, and we understood it then. However, in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's writings, in Message to the Black Man of America, and in several of his articles, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that should a black person arise who would not sell us out, who would fight for justice for us as a people, that that person should get the full backing and support of our people. Then, of course, Reverend Jackson said he wanted to become President of the United States. He's a black man that has been tested and tried. He stood up for us. He would plead our case. I don't believe he would sell us out. I felt we were obligated to support him. So 24 of us met from around the country to raise the critical question within the Nation of Islam, followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as to whether we would register to vote in his support. And we agreed unanimously, and so this we have done. I don't think it's a departure from the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It is a step up in maturing to handle what is necessary for the time in which we live.
You've been an entertainer, the charmer. What do you think of the superstars today? What do you think of Michael Jackson?
I love Michael Jackson. All of our great talent is just marvelous. Our thinking is that this talent should not be abused and improperly exploited. Michael Jackson, of course, is the premier entertainer in the world today, and is a very loving and sweet person. I know what show business is. I mean, we can be in our own world when you're an entertainer, and the world of the musician or the world of the entertainer is their own world, and oftentimes their own world is divorced from the world of reality. And so with Michael, you know, with the curl down his forehead, it's very attractive. He's a beautiful young man, and the sequin glove and the shoes that are jeweled. Our young people want to be accepted. So whatever the mass accepts, well, they feel maybe this is my way to get accepted. I resent that. And I believe that there are those who manage these awesome monsters called television cameras and movie cameras, who purposely want to put before black men images that are not strong, so that our youth become weak and effeminate acting and less than masculine. Our women suffer because we don't have strong black men. And I think our youth suffer, our black men suffer because they don't have fathers that are strong when they're in the home, or they don't have fathers at all. We've got to reverse this. So I would appeal to our entertainers, think about the image that you want to portray, and don't come before your people acting like a woman, or if you're a man, or cheapening your own character just for the sake of $1. That's my thinking. And it is not to be meant to be super critical of a brother such as Michael Jackson, whom I would pay to go and see myself, because I just think he's a marvelous talent. I just would like to see him provide the strength to young men who need strength now through his leadership.
The harshest criticism I've heard about you is that you can be compared to Jim Jones. That yes, you are very charming, that you have a great impact on people, that your followers get very excited by you and will do what you tell them to do, but that you're dangerous to your followers. How would you refute that?
Well, I would ask the person, how am I dangerous? Am I dangerous because I'm loved? And by the words that they speak against me, they want me to be hated by those who love me? Am I dangerous because I impart knowledge? How am I dangerous? Am I dangerous because I have charisma? If I had charisma and I used it like Michael Jackson uses his, I wouldn't be dangerous, because I would have no view, and all you would do is buy my record and beat it and say that's a thriller. But you'd be just as dumb and silly after singing and dancing as you were before you bought my record. But it is precisely because I'm not just charismatic, I have wisdom. And I impart knowledge to the masses of the people who have been lied to by the government and miseducated by the system. This is what makes me dangerous. Ask those who are with me, am I dangerous to them? Is it dangerous to give them a constructive home life? Is it dangerous to put men and women in respect and honor of each other and to rear their children properly? Is it dangerous to tell men to not drink and not smoke dope and not party and bring your money home and spend it on your family, and let's get independent education, let's go into business and build? How am I dangerous? I'm dangerous because my critics wish that they had the love of the people that they see Farrakhan enjoying. And I could not make the people love me. That is the gift of God. And if they love me for the good that I'm doing, I say the praise belongs to God and give him the glory. I'm only doing my duty. I shall be gone from the earth one day, and I shall be gone forever. Leave me alone and let me make my contribution to the onward march of black people and hopefully to human progress toward divine.
Black Horizons is a production of WFAA TV 8, a Below Broadcasting station.